recorded this. I'm glad I said that before the recording caught it. All righty. Happy Tuesday. Very excited about tonight. If you have heard me talk in like the last couple months, I bring up Susan's name all the time because I'm just so proud of her and I'm just like so in awe of her journey. And so I really wanted to have her share that journey with everybody else. So welcome everybody. Very excited to have you. Thank you for taking the time to come support a fellow member. And also, I hope that you learn something. And so without further ado, we will get started on this A to Z chat with Miss Susan Wilson, who is currently an Italian wine ambassador extraordinaire. We actually took a trip to Italy together last year, although she disappeared on me multiple times.
I
Susan,
always have a plan.
it's like, y'all have fun. I'll see you when I see you. It was great though. It was a great trip. And we're just going to talk about your journey, um, kind of where you started in your personal journey into wine, and where you are now, and then what are the next moves and everything in between. So we can start with maybe you can do a introduction of yourself through your view. I always think that that's important for people to introduce themselves and kind of give an overall of how they would like to be seen and heard.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I am so honored to be able to talk to you tonight. I was asking myself, am I really that interesting that I deserve a whole chat? But as Tahira always tells us, we need to pop out and really give ourselves accolades. I said, my story is a good story. So maybe something I say tonight will be meaningful to you. It is my story, my experiences, and just as yours, your story and your experiences. Well, just a little background. I am a Floridian who moved here to attend college years ago and stayed a little while, explored a little bit, and came back and met my husband, started a family. So I've been here for multiple years. How I got into wine was really just part of my family background. When I was a child, we had a cookbook at home, and my one sister, two brothers, we get bored, we just pull out the cookbook and start making stuff out of the cookbook. So that's why I learned how to follow recipes and just be daring with what I ate. And on top of that, my father was a caterer. So I was always around food and service and just understanding how to make people happy through food. So fast forward, my travel bug hit when I was in college, and I had a professor who had been to Africa, and he showed us the artifacts and told us about his experiences. So I said, one day I'm going to Africa too. I wasn't afraid. I was just curious. I wanted to know what he knew. I wanted to have similar experiences. So I eventually did go to Africa. I went to Nigeria for about 9 months, and that
Okay.
was post-college, postgraduate school. But anyway, getting back to food, just to kind of let you know how my journey continued. When I was raising my family, I would volunteer for different events around the city. This is one of my vintage Atlanta food and wine t-shirts. And at that time, they had classrooms where people came in and they talked about wine, and they also paired it with food. So it was kind of integrating my experiences from when I was younger and now coming into I guess, a more adult experience. So I did that for years. I volunteered at different events. And when we were shut down during the pandemic, I did some soul searching and I said, well, life is short. What do you want to do from this point forward? You can go back to technical writing, which is what my background is, or you can see what this wine is all about, because you're always reading the back of the label and Googling what this means. So maybe you can find a place there. I decided to enroll in WSET 1 to see if I had the discipline to be back in school and if the subject matter would hold me long enough that I would continue with the certification. So I did one. Well, I enrolled in one, and then I also began to work seasonally at Total Wine and More, not too far from my home. So I could kind of, have the balance of the education and also be present around bottles of wine and meeting customers and learn how to sell. So that was my foray into the wine journey. I eventually completed WSET 2, WSET 3. And once I finished the third certification, I decided enough with this book knowledge. I really want to get out and see what's going on in the
Mhm.
vineyards, putting everything together. So I was fortunate to get some travel experiences. One was through Total Wine. I went to Napa and did a 1 week harvest experience. I went to Santa Lucia Highlands for another experience. So just things like that that helped me understand what I had learned. All right. So I got an email from Tahira, well, to the Hugh Society, and it said scholarship. And I've always taught my daughters, don't leave money on the table. If someone's giving you free wine education, in my case, then see what it's all about. See if you will be accepted. So I was accepted into the Italian Wine Ambassador program. If I could just put a pin there and let you know that I had no interest in Italy whatsoever. No interest. Other
What?
than Lambrusco, which I love, and had traveled there a couple of times prior to this invitation to apply to the scholarship, but I was not going back. And some of our chapter members have heard me talk about why. And that's because during COVID, I was on a group trip with some people from Kennesaw State University. Someone in the group got COVID and it spread.
Oh,
I didn't know I had COVID until I was at the airport in Rome, and they said you can't travel.
wow. Yes.
So I still get chills thinking about it. Just the fact that you could be going about your business and someone just stops you.
Yeah.
And not only did they stop me, they confiscated me, so to speak. They put me in a government quarantine for close to 2 weeks.
Oh God.
So, without going into all the details there, when I finally left Italy with tears in my eyes because I was so happy to be free, I said, I am
Yeah.
not going back. You could have this, you could have that. I'm not, no. So, me being me, when I applied for the scholarship, because I can't leave money on the table, I thought, well, let's just go ahead and do this and see what happens. I've got the time right now. So, this is what I call the period before the exam. Didn't have any interest, thought I'd do it just to see what happened, and then I was accepted. Now, the scholarship covered the tuition, which is basically video lessons,
Mhm.
and it also required that I buy a book. So this is one point that I want to make in investing in your wine education. Do expect that you may get a scholarship, but there may be additional expenses. So I had to buy a book, which I have here. It was, let me know if you can see it,
Yeah.
500 pages. which I purchased on Amazon for roughly $50. And then they had a supplemental book. So we had the videos, I bought the book, and I bought this other book. All right. So now the exam was in 6 weeks. I'm moving into what I would call, yeah, still before the exam. I had 6 weeks.
Wait, before you move into that, let's cover some things. Let's backtrack a little bit. You didn't answer the first set of my questions, so I have some follow-ups, which
Okay.
I appreciate this because it's very smooth sailing. But like, what you've already answered what inspired you to get into the wine industry, and what it was kind of. So were you afraid, because Italy is a very specific like industry. It's not like there's like 1,200 indigenous grapes in Italy. So that in itself is like a terrifying kind of feat to. I've always stayed away from Italy. Like
Mhm.
I don't even I love Italian wine though. But did you, was there any kind of like fear in pursuing that? Like, I know the scholarship was there, but there still had to be something that's kind of just like pushing you towards something that's so abstract in so many ways.
No, I didn't have fear. I think one thing about being an adult learner is that it's your choice now. Nobody's requiring you to do what you do. If you chose to finish high school and go on to college, that was your choice. If you got your degree, then you know you have the capacity to study and learn.
Right.
So I wasn't afraid of the subject matter at all. And I knew it was a big mountain I'd have to climb, but I still wanted to do it because
Yeah.
it was there.
Yeah.
So, so yes, I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did.
Mhm.
And you were one of the founding members of the Atlanta chapter back in 2020. I should
Um,
this. Is it 2021,
2020-ish, yeah.
2020?
Mhm.
Well, it feels like it was 10 years ago. Um, what made you, because you were also transitioning at that time, right, into more of the wine space. What was that like transitioning as a, you say older learner, is the way you phrased it?
Adult learner
Adult learner, sorry. Adult learner.
and older too, I guess.
I
But
don't look, we all older. You don't feel old, you ain't old. You don't look old either, so but age-wise.
mhm.
What was that transition like, kind of coming into this space from a completely different field? And I think you have an amazing background in being exposed to a lot of those things, which a lot of, people don't really grow up with. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Which part? The
The journey into, from transitioning from your one profession into kind of tinkering into the wine industry, kind of joining this random group of people, and kind of how that has helped you along the way.
Well, as far as switching careers, I was not afraid. I think I'm very curious by nature. And if I want information, I know how to find it. Now, I'd never sold wine before, so that was more intimidating than just entering into the space, excuse me. So I had to learn how to take a bottle and talk about the bottle and convince somebody to buy the bottle. And as a Black woman in that particular space, I didn't always have the credibility, credibility that someone else thought I needed.
Yeah, of
And let me rephrase that. Uh, I wasn't always believed when I
course.
said, this tastes good or these are the qualities. So those are some of the little microaggressions I experienced in sales. But as far as my education and me going forward, I had no fear. In fact, I was one of the only persons there who actually had the WSET training.
Mm.
I continued from one to two to three. So by the time I left there, I was a three. And as far as knowing about wine, you couldn't touch me. But as far as someone else perceiving me to know what I know, it wasn't always there. They might
Yeah,
prefer to go to a man
yeah.
or question me, but that's okay. That's okay. Wasn't my calling anyway, I don't think, to be in retail sales. I think I'm kind of in my lane now.
Yeah, and you're definitely being generous with with that because I know exactly what you're talking about, and you're being very kind. But yeah, it's a trust thing, and it's an immediate lack of trust that they exude on you, and you have to prove yourself, even if you are the smartest one in the room. So, I commend you for overcoming that, and with such grace, because, like I said, you're being generous right now. Um, but let's talk about like you're Italy, right? I know you didn't want to go back, but here's the scholarship, and now you're in this course and you're studying for it, and then what happened?
So then what happened? I got the materials, and my God, I knew that Italy was large, but I wasn't just learning a map and where things are. I had to learn the history of Italy, going from the Bronze Age up until about the 1980s, because we're learning about ancient tribes and how they affected viticulture, how
Mhm.
the grapes were grown. Apart from history, I let me, I'm, it was so much I just had to remind myself. Give me a second. Oh, Italian cuisines. And I
Mhm.
don't mean ragu on box pasta, which is how which is how I learned about spaghetti and Italian dressing, or as my dad called it, Italian dressing. It was none of that. These were foods specific to the region
Sure.
and the wines that pair with it.
Yeah.
So that was a part of it. The 500 grapes in this book, thankfully, we didn't have to know every grape, but we had to know what was related to what. So let's say, for example, the Lambrusco grape is native to Emilia Romagna. That's what they call an auto, oh, pardon me, let me just say native grape. I'm not going to butcher the word, but it has cousins, and each
Mhm.
cousin has a different flavor profile. So we have to learn those groups of grapes. You don't know what you're going to be tested on. It's a broad test. So um, soils. Okay, what kind of soils are in this region? What kind of grapes grow in this type of soil? So it was science focused, it was history focused, it was such a broad exam.
Yeah.
But in that, something sparked, and I
Mhm.
began to enjoy it.
Mhm.
I knew I couldn't learn everything, obviously, in 6 weeks. I only had 6 weeks. But what I learned was so interesting. And then
Yeah.
I started thinking about, I wonder what the African people were doing when all of this was happening. I wonder how the slaves were. I mean, it just kind of began to build on
Mhm.
itself, and drew me in apart from just the wine itself.
So two questions. What was your favorite pairing that you just learned about? Um, like I'm talking about like in depth. Like what's your favorite region and then like the pairing, the grapes, like that kind of thing. And the other question is a little bit more along the lines of what you were speaking about as far as like the African people and stuff. What I have found is that there are a lot of history is left out of these courses and studying and all that stuff. So did they mention the African indentured servants? Did they mention the ways in which African people come over to work the fields and to tend the land and all of that stuff? Was there ever any mention of how any other contribution from another culture?
There was mention of contribution, but it was very general. So this is where, as a person who's curious, you start digging deeper because the exam is not a history exam, but it includes history. So take southern Italy, Sicily, which is close to Africa. Uh, we kind of touched upon the culture of the Moors, who were brown people. Oh my gosh, it was just so interesting to see how grapes moved from culture to culture and person to person. But yes, the Romans had slaves. They weren't treated in the way that we understand American slaves to have been treated, but they did have slaves.
Right.
Uh, they had, even amongst the Italian citizens, they had indentured servants. But these are the kinds of things that you learn because you want to,
Right.
not because you have to for the exam.
Right.
And I forgot the first part of your question.
What's your favorite region and parent?
Oh,
Like
so
what surprised you the most? That whole thing.
okay, my favorite region was the one I most recently went to, and that was Sicily.
Hmm.
It was the longest trip, but my gosh, I could still taste the food. Southern Italy has the best food.
Yes, it does.
The wines are delicious. I happen to be in the region um, closest to Mount Etna, so I was in the eastern part of the island. I went there through Vin Italy actually to a trade event. Was there for about a week, and then I stayed a few days later because I wanted to climb Mount Etna. Which
Hmm. Did you do
uh,
it?
I did it. It was
Oh,
the most thrilling and exciting thing
amazing.
that I've done in my years. But it's just indicative of my personality. When I decide I want to do something, then I figure out how to do it. Um, if I can just circle back to this exam, it was the same thing. I took it twice.
Yeah.
First time, I failed it. I figured out why I failed it, and I determined, okay, I'm going to take it again and I'm going to pass it. So, kind of getting back to the pairing, what I've been doing recently is what I call dare to pair. I'm coming up with my own pairings with Italian wine. So
Hmm.
just recently, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I made some pistachio cookies with dark chocolate and matcha. So I've got these wines here from my studies and from traveling. Italian wines is what I wanted to pair with. And I actually had an old bottle of, oh, there's the wine. I have an old bottle of dessert wine,
Yeah.
Vinsanto.
Exactly.
Yes, yes. So I also had a wine from Valpolicella.
Hmm.
My brother gave me, and I just started playing around and said, okay, what tastes good with this? What tastes good with that? So it turns out that the Vinsanto was the better pairing for those cookies. Odd to have dark chocolate and pistachio and Italian dessert wine, but that's kind of where my interests are taking me now to see what can go with what. At our last Hue event here in Atlanta, we did Riesling Day, and I said, what goes with Riesling? So I made some rosemary shortbread cookies because I've got some rosemary out in my yard. Chopped it up, made some cookies, glazed them with lemon. And I said, I want to see if people like this with Riesling. And it was delicious.
I missed it.
I'll say this, those cookies were amazing. Like everyone was being polite because we were like, oh, let's have one each. But at a certain point, it stopped getting polite. Like people were fighting to
You
get
gotta
polite.
drop the recipe, Susan.
So good.
Yeah,
Playing around and drop the recipe.
I got you. But I mean, that's the fun to me of wine. And of course, we're talking about Italian wine, and that's where my focus is. But that's how I'm pushing myself. I
Yeah.
do love wines from Abruzzo and Marche. And as I mentioned before, I love Lambrusco, not the sweet ones, but the dry ones. And I just continue to have an open mind and an open palate when it comes to Italian wines, because it is just such a vast amount of grapes that you can discover.
How do you feel like you're using, I mean, I think you're kind of answering this question as we talk, but how do you feel like you're using your platform to inspire or educate others, either directly or indirectly? Because not all of us want to be like, oh, I'm this giant inspiration, you know, but sometimes it's an indirect thing.
Well, I think I hope that I'm an inspiration to someone else by the way I live. And it's not necessarily intentional where I get up and I say, I'm going to be inspirational today. But as I said to you earlier, I never thought I was interesting. But when I reflect on my life and the experiences I've had and the places I've been able to go and the beautiful family I was blessed to raise, I do have an interesting story. But it hasn't been smooth sailing. I've had ups and downs just like most people do. But I think right now, my goal is to plant a seed every day, a seed into myself and my own aspirations, but also into someone else. It could be a kind word, it could be um, I don't know, encouragement. It's just where I am. If you're inspired by it, I hope so. God bless you. That's wonderful. But I'm not going to beat you over the head and say, be inspired by me. I'm
Yeah.
wonderful, awesome, be inspired. No, I want you to find out who you are. And maybe some of the things that I've done, the courage that I've had will inspire you to do the same thing.
No, I'm absolutely inspired by you. Like I said in the beginning, like your name is always in my mouth. I'm like, Susan.
I
She's
don't
like,
even know why. I'm just me.
um, I don't think that it has to be anything, doesn't have to be these spectacular things, but your tenacity is admirable. Like you are yourself at all times. Um, and you can tell like when you are going for something, you're going for it. Like whether it's a party that you're going to in Italy and you splitting off from everybody, which I love that. I was cracking up because you say, all right, see you guys.
I
But
had
like
the
I thought
best
that that
time
was
too.
I thought it was so dope because, you know, everybody's kind of just like, you know, stuck together and trying to do these group things. And you had a plan. And I was like, that's amazing, man. Like people who just do their thing and are not worried about anything else. And it's not like in a harmful way, but like, just like, listen, I'm gonna try this. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But at least I tried it. And I've seen that in you since you joined the organization, like from the beginning. You absorbed everything. You always kind of supported and put yourself out there. And you know, you show up for what's really interesting for you. And so yeah, I'm really inspired by that. I think if you read the comments, I don't know if you've seen the comments, but there, you know, people are also dropping things in the comments. And I'm sure that your children are incredibly inspired by you. And you're a straight shooter. I love that. I love people who, you know, will tell you know exactly how they feel, exactly what they're thinking, and all the rest of the stuff. And so, yeah, if you are 100% inspiring because you're yourself all the time and you don't try to impress anybody. And I think that that's incredibly admirable.
Thank
Um,
you for that.
but speaking of, do you think you'll be seeing a lot more Black women entering the space? The reason I asked about the question as far as being an inspiration is because a lot of times people need to see that it is possible, right? And you are one of the very few, not only Black people who is an Italian wine ambassador, and that test is hard as hell,
Mhm.
but also you didn't give up. You've taken it twice, but you're also one of the few women and Black women. And I think that that in itself is inspiring. And do you think that, you know, just kind of being in these circles now, that you'll see more Black women entering the space?
I do. I do. I recently connected with Lindsay Cole. I don't know if she's jumped on, but she took the test in 2024, I believe, in Verona. And when you take the test in Verona, it's a longer experience. It's 5 days. Whereas
Mm.
when I took it, it was 3 days. Let me clarify, the test isn't 5 days, But what happens is that you have an educational experience leading up to the exam. And in Verona, it's a 5-day process. Then you take the test and so on.
Yeah.
When you take it here in the States, so far it's been 3 days. So when I took it in New York, it was I went up the day before. We had 2 days of classroom training, tasting primarily. Third day, take the exam. Same thing happened in Chicago. But as far as more Black women or Black people in general, yes. And that's one of my goals as I think about Italian wine. There's so much more we could be drinking. We kind of think about the traditional things, especially Prosecco. There. Sorry. We
Yeah.
can do a lot more than Prosecco.
Well,
But
you
there's
didn't say
nothing wrong with
Moscato,
it.
but somebody just said Moscato.
And see, that's the beautiful thing about it. If you want Moscato, there's so many different types of Moscato. And then that leads me into telling you about other sweet wines you could drink. So that's why I think it's so inspirational for me when I think about Italian wines that there's a grape for every occasion and a grape for every palate. And as a woman of color in this Italian wine space, I'd like to bring that knowledge to our circles, to our communities, so that we can taste what life has for us.
So tell us, what are some underrated wines that we should be tapping into?
Mhm.
Can you give us a few?
Oh, that was a question?
Yeah.
Uh, I, I, I thought you were signing off on what I said.
I am, but I was saying like, yeah, so tell us what should we be tapping into? What's something that we could that's available here, by the way, because that's it.
Okay. And before we end our conversation, and I will get to that, I do want to make sure we talk about cultural barriers to this exam.
So
So
let's
let me just talk about wine. Um, okay, we're changing seasons. Um, and on my Instagram, I'm going to start posting some spring wines. Um, let's talk about Churraswolo, which I think a lot of us from our chapter have had, at least if you attended the dinner at Alici last year. But it's a light red wine. It's fruity. In the glass, it looks like rosé almost, a dark rosé, but it's not rosé. And it is so delicious. You can um, have it in a fresh style where it doesn't see oak, mostly stainless steel, but it's good for sipping on the porch. I tend to go to white wines. Vermentino is light if you want something kind of lemony and zippy and citrusy. Vermentino, Verdicchio puts you in that space as well. Kind of cheating and looking at my wine bottles over there.
it's fine.
But I'll stop right there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Wait, got one more?
I mean, I always have some, but I'll stop.
I think those are good. And earlier you mentioned Vinsanto, Malvasia is another good one that I mentioned. There's a plethora, like you said, there were 500 in that book. There are thousands of
Mhm.
indigenous Italian grapes.
And undiscovered even, or that they're bringing back.
Yeah, it's a beast. So, I was so excited when you passed that test because I know how hard that is. Like just period. I know how hard it is. Somebody say anything from Lazio.
Yes, that's
Okay.
Tessa. She and I we hung out at Venetali, and we tasted some wines from Lazio.
Mhm.
Uh, we that's where we had Vermentino,
Yeah,
a particular producer. But yes, it's very savory.
yeah. Well, speaking of the difficulties of the test and just like being in the Italian space, we spoke earlier about just being a Black woman in the industry, with your experience from sales and Total Wine. those microaggressions, that's a barrier, right? That's enough to make you quit because no one wants to feel like that all the time. All the way through, taking this test and what that looks like, because I know on my side what I kind of had to kind of pulled some power moves for Vin Italy to make sure those scholarships were going through. So that's another barrier. But what were the barriers for the test? I mean, language, that kind of, what were the barriers? You can tell us.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to change the word barrier to challenge. Language, of course, not only I don't speak Italian, but I also had to start to hear it. And I mentioned the learning method was videos. So sitting 2 hours at a time watching videos, if that's not your learning style, then that takes a lot of discipline and tenacity. Also taking notes from the videos. And I'm going, what did he say? To rewind it. What did she say? Rewind it. So there were about 20, maybe Tessa could drop it in the chat. But when I did the test, there were about 20 videos and they were on each region, but then some of them were just on Roman history,
Mhm.
talking about the vessels they use for for storing wine. It was all kinds of stuff.
Did they show the penis? The penis ones? Did y'all see those?
Oh no, did I?
Okay, I'm gonna send the picture. When I was so they have these vessels that they used to drink out of that were shaped like penises. I promise, I'm
I
not
think
making.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
More southern Italy thing, I think. Yeah. Yeah. So okay, so I say it's a barrier, or rather a challenge or obstacle, because you have to know your learning style. And it's hard these days to sit and watch a movie for 2 hours, a movie you want to see. So let alone watching multiple videos for that extended amount of time. Another barrier was access to wine, and the cost of the wine. I
Mhm.
said I don't like barrier, challenge. Um, I was fortunate in that I built a relationship with a wine shop, and the young woman was so generous. She didn't require me to buy a case of something
Yeah.
to learn the wine, because you do get a list of suggested wines for each region,
Yeah.
very specific suggested list. But I did what I could. I didn't have thousands of dollars to invest in purchasing wine, but I did what I could. Um, I think I mentioned also the food.
Mhm.
Um, we do have Italian cuisine here in Atlanta, and I think it's getting better, but it's never been my go-to cuisine, let alone to know how things are pronounced in Italian.
Right.
So that was quite a challenge too. Um, let's see, what else would I consider a challenge? Oh, you do need a support system. So you need your family to understand I can't be available to make dinner or go grocery shopping because I've got this thing in 6 weeks and I have to get up at 6 a.m. and study to 6 p.m. or perhaps beyond, and I just can't be there for you. Not only the financial support, I think I've already mentioned having to purchase wines. I went to a bunch of tastings, especially when I got back from New York. Uh, it's really immersing yourself in Italian culture.
Yeah.
And when I failed the test the first time, Sarah, our instructor, she said, some people are just great at memorizing, but that doesn't mean they know Italian wine. She said, you have to treat it as a layer. So each experience you have, you're adding a layer. The test was my base layer, the test and the studying. But after that, I said, all right, I made a note of what I didn't do well on. And I said, okay, I'm going to figure this out. So that's exactly what I did. When I got back to Atlanta, I enrolled in Wine Scholar Guild because a lot of people who passed had done that. Keep that in mind, y'all, because nobody's going to tell you that. They say you need at least a WSET 3 to pass the exam. But that's not quite enough. You need a broader exposure to Italian wine and culture, which was a barrier for me. As I mentioned, grew up in Central Florida. We're eating spaghetti sauce out the jar.
I used to ketchup in my spaghetti, so I
Stouffer's lasagna. So what do I know?
yeah. But you did
So,
it though.
yeah, so those are some of the things that were challenges. But as I said, once I regrouped and I figured out what I was weak on, I fixed it. This test has blind tasting, I should mention, and it's not a WSET style blind tasting. You only get 2 wines, but VIA has their own grid and own tasting requirements. Now,
Mhm.
something that was different that I hadn't been exposed to was describing wine by texture and
Mm.
fermentation temperature,
Oh wow.
winemaking style. So it was pretty extensive tasting note, but I did not have that experience. So somehow I passed it. Both times I passed my blind tasting. Did I mention a group project?
No.
Okay, there is a group project. Usually you're in a team of 3 to 4 people and you have about 5 minutes to create. Wait, yeah, you have to create a 5 minute video on a topic that VIA provides for you. So each
Oh,
person has about 1 minute to address this topic. And typically you're going to do it when you all meet in whatever city it is, but some people are able to coordinate it just before they get there.
wow.
So that was a part of the exam too. Blind tasting, group project, 150 questions of multiple choice, but not 3 choices, 4, if not 5 choices. So you, I just remember asking myself, why you,
Why you want to do this twice?
if you could have seen me in my office, why am I doing this? I'm like, somebody somebody check on me because I don't know what's wrong with me. Why am I going through this? So, but I tell you, that's where, and I don't know if this is your question, but let me just add it. As a woman of color, I looked around me at the people who were there that I couldn't see. So I thought about my mother, thought about my aunties. At the time, Kamala Harris was running for president the second time. I thought, well, dang, look at what she's doing. And I just thought about all the people who have done difficult things. And here I am doing something difficult, not on their scale necessarily, but I pulled from their strength. So
Yeah.
that's what got me through that part of the
Well, I
preparation.
mean, yeah, that's the communal glory of being a Black woman. You get to pull on that, and I'm sure that someone is looking at you and kind of moving through the same space. So what now? Now you passed the test, you're an
Mhm.
ambassador. What does it mean to be an ambassador? Are you do you get paid for this? Is it a job? Like, are you able to how are you able to utilize this newfound fame?
Well, you do get a little pin, but that's all you get.
And bragging rights? A pin and bragging rights? Is that what we're saying?
You get some extra gray hair. I mean, you really have to ask yourself, and this I'll make this point because I think it's important. Yes, it's fun to get the letters behind your signature, but you really have to have a strong why for
Mhm.
whatever wine education um, you're wanting to do, because the why is what sustains you. I believe this is my chain of events. Meeting you, taking the exam, going to Vin Italy, and everything just kind of clicking.
Yeah.
Doing more extensive travel in Italy. So now what am I doing? I'm writing about Italian wine. Finally, Tessa, if she's still on the call, um, I'm experimenting with how to use wine in everyday circumstances.
Yeah.
I'm pursuing an opportunity to teach Italian wine as a course. I need to finish my, oh yes, and I'm doing Italian wine scholar certificate through Wine Scholar Guild. Just gotta take my part one exam and then do part two. But yeah, I think I'm in a comfortable space. As I said earlier, I want to bring wine to our community in a different way to get them as excited as I am about it, as curious as I am about it, and just to enjoy what is there for us to enjoy.
Yeah.
We don't have to be boxed in by the frames that people put us in. And that would be my hope. So if you, well, let me pull back for a second. I'm starting to interview myself. Go.
It's fine. So make sure you're following Susan. I saw somebody drop her IG in the chat because it sounds like there's a lot of amazing content coming. Um, and if you have a website, you could let us know that. And I'm going to open this up for Q&A. I did see people dropping a couple questions in the chat while we were talking. But if you want to just take yourself off of mute to ask those questions, please feel free, or I can scroll back through this lengthy chat to find them. All right. I'll scroll. Okay, y'all really want
Well,
to
I just have to say how proud it's Nadine.
anything.
I have to say how proud I am of Susan. I met Susan as a fellow charter member of the Atlanta Hugh Society, and just to watch where she's just gone to is just, it's like you said, so inspiring. I just love to see it, especially as someone who's also of the mature variety in terms of our education. It's funny because we kind of both did the same thing. I started my W set during COVID. Um, and so kind of was a late bloomer in terms of formal wine education. And yeah, I just think it's amazing. I think, you're never too quote unquote old to pursue your passion. And I tell people that myself all the time. So yeah, I'm inspired by her. I think we were in touch the last time and she was in Sicily. And that is so high on my bucket list. So I feel like we need to work together. I think I can get her some money, even though that's not on her priority list. But
Oh, yes, it is. My
oh,
priorities change quickly when it comes to
oh,
Cecily.
well then, Susan, yeah, yeah. If you want some money from that, then we need to talk. But yeah, I really just wanted to say how much, and she's been supportive of me as well. So it was so important for me to be on tonight, and just congratulations, Susan. I love your story and what you do. So
Thank you for your kind words.
yeah.
It's with a little love fest. Somebody else, Nadine said, how did the Wine Scholar Guild help? I think that is an important question.
Mhm. Yes, that is an important question. It helps because now everything is dissected into smaller pieces. Because when you get your material from VIA, you get that book, you get the videos, and then you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
I had a learning coach because of the way my mind works. It was just too much for me to sort through this.
Yeah.
So she helped me to come up with a plan. And I followed the study plan, and I checked in with her maybe twice during the 6 weeks just to see how things were going. Is what we designed a good pace for you? She also gave me a lot of emotional support. And let me just add this real quick because I think this is also important, and I'll be brief. When you're taking these exams, the way you talk to yourself in your head is so critical. When I failed the first time, thankfully I had that coach who told me, you're doing a lot for 6 weeks. So, however it turns out, commend yourself for even trying. Because old Susan, perfectionist Susan, would have had a pity party. But this Susan said, okay, I know what I need to do. Let me just go and figure this out. And I'm passing that dang on exam. Because the self-talk tells you you can't do it. You're too this, you're too that. I know I'm not stupid. I know I'm intelligent. I know I applied myself. So what is it that I didn't, well, I couldn't improve upon? And that's what I did. So
Awesome.
whatever you're doing with your certifications, please be careful with your self-talk and know that nobody's going to punish you if you have to take something twice. People take all kinds of exams more than once.
Right, of course. We actually had another member, Jayla. She's in New York. She just took it, and she was DMing the whole time, like while she was waiting for her results and all the things. I was trying to find her DM, and she didn't pass, but she had a good spirit about it. But I just wonder if, like, she said it was 15 people. Um, Only 2 people passed when she took it.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said she learned a lot and now she knows what to expect. So it sounds like she's going to, kind of head back in there and do it again, which I hope she does. But I think, just that self-talk, that, understanding, like, this isn't like something you're walking into that's a hop, skip, and a jump. Like, it's a lot. It's intense. And you're doing something completely different language, and it's not natural to you. You're learning about a whole nother culture in a very short period of time, and the learning styles in which they offer probably don't coincide with your learning style. And so I think you make an incredible point about just giving yourself grace, right, as we're kind of going through this. There was another question in here. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, it was the question of what are you doing now since you've got your certification, and um, all of that, all of the, what are you moving into? Sicily is where White Lotus 2 was, right?
Yes.
White Lotus
I
2.
went to Taormina, the little town where it was filmed. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I actually went to a vineyard where they did some filming. So yes, Sicily is ready for us. How they do?
Listen,
So this is it.
I've never organized a trip back to Sicily. Me and Nadine, me and Janine, but me
Mhm.
and Nadine can go. Me and Janine went because she actually won Sicilian Maestro last year too, and so that was such an experience. But you're right, like, Sicily is so different from Verona and the south and the north. Completely, you would think they were different, like they had nothing to do with each other.
Mhm.
So I agree with you on that. It's definitely my favorite part so far, and we'll be going back for sure. I'm trying to see, I see 7 new messages. Oh, Tessa took the test too, right?
Yes, Tessa took it in Chicago, and Tessa's going to be ready the next time. And I'm available to help people to answer questions. I'm still learning, so helping you helps me as well.
Yeah. Shaw said, "Thank you, Susan. Wonderful talk. You're truly an inspiration, and it's an honor to be in the chapter with you."
Oh my gosh. Y'all not gonna make me cry.
Yeah, yes. Yes, we are. I'm always crying. So I didn't cry tonight. Somebody else. No.
That's so
Uh,
sweet. I'm not gonna be able to
Tessa
make you.
said, "Seeing Susan inspires me to take it again. Great tips. Susan, you're amazing. Um, let's see. Cheers to overcoming." This just got interesting. I think that was about the penis vessels. Um, Sometimes just the discipline of watching the videos is a lot. Um, Alicia had a really good point earlier that I just wanted to point out. And she said, "I'm always, in all caps, afraid when I take classes because my memory isn't what it used to be, and I'm horrible at geography, and I have a horrible test anxiety." And I hope that this conversation helped to alleviate that thought process and kind of let you know, like, you can, what I heard from Susan is that she took it and made it her own. She figured out a way to transform it to make the test her own, and kind of took her path. And I think that is so important. I'm very much against certifications in one way or another, as far as like them creating a space that it creates acceptance, but doing it for yourself, like Susan did, I think is brilliant. And if you're going to do that, make it yours. Like, you don't have to go the path that they're offering. You know how you learn, you know how, you know what support you need, you know what things make you tick. And a lot of times we feel so inundated into doing things the way that they're offered, or people have always done them. And what I heard was, all right, I tried it your way, and I'm gonna do it my way. And your way obviously worked, because here we are. So does anybody else have any questions, comments, or anything else before I let Miss Susan go?
Hey, yes, I do.
Hi, Karen.
Hey, Susan. Yes, I remember Susan when she was tearing up them Total Wine floors. But this is awesome. You are awesome. Being in a retail space now myself, this is just really cool to see you from there to here. And I'm just gonna follow you. So there we go.
Thank you, Karen. I'm telling Karen to travel more.
I do. Need to get the hell out of here.
Oh, Kara, you definitely, yeah. Don't set the world on fire, Karen.
Probably will.
You should. Don't set the world on
Hi,
fire.
Nadine.
We all know. Nadine, I think Atlanta chapter misses you.
Absolutely.
But all right, if no one else has any comments, questions, well, thank you, Susan, for sharing and your vulnerability and all of the tips and everything. And I hope that you guys were able to take something from this. And thank you all for your time and being here. And thank you to Susan's family for coming to support. I hope you are as proud. I know you are as proud of her and as we are. And yeah, we'll see you guys at the next event. Also, going to drop those pictures in circle. Y'all think I'm gonna drop them.
What pictures?
Oh, the penis pics?
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
I
Ending
can't wait to
meeting.
see him.
Say
I got
peace. Stop recording.
Oh,